Hello, and thank you for joining us at the Vector Software Quality Symposium today. My name is Michael Serisier, and I'm a QA engineer at Vector. I work on a product called Squore, which is a smart data aggregator that helps you make the right decisions for your project. And we will actually reference Squore a bit later in this presentation, since our topic today is about practicing what we build and what we learn by using Squore while we are actually developing Squore. So I want to share with you in the next 20 minutes how we benefit from using our own product in our development process, how it helps us minimize risks when we ship a new release, and you'll see it can surely be applied to your own development environment too. So let's dive in and let me tell you a bit about how we work. I'm sure you can relate to how many sources of information are available to you if you're a member of an agile development team. It's not just the source code you're dealing with, it's requirements, bug reports, test code, test results, documentation, there's your bill of materials, your support tickets, your process documents. It's all part of your project cycle, and it can all have an impact on your planning. So I tried to come up with a number for how many tools are actually available to me in my development pipeline, and that number I think is close to 20, which feels like a lot. And then there's the people. As developers, testers, project managers, we all produce information constantly, and we share it via email, instant messaging, ALMs, calendars, and so on. So that's another 5 or 6 platforms in my case where we share information and where we discuss vital information about how the project is going. And that's even before you start thinking about the various code branches that we support. Code review feedback, and how different development branches can impact each other after they're integrated. So not all team members need to follow all the information in real time, of course, but it's still information overload. And chances are that sometimes you feel like you're spending more time searching for an answer than actually coding or testing, especially if you have to answer the same question multiple times, or if you need to cross-reference information from different sources to find your answer. So if I don't want me and my team running after the information, I have to provide a new source of information to answer all their questions. And that's how you enter the smart aggregator lifestyle. What we want to achieve by aggregating data is a single source of objective information regarding the quality of my project at a given time. So let's go back to our main sources of information and categorize them by type. For my project, which is the next releases we're planning to ship, basically the main components are requirements, source code, test results, code coverage, third-party libraries, there's version control metadata, bug reports, support requests. And the first step to fighting information overload is to get the raw data from each platform. And for this, we chose the tools that we work with so that they're not closed platforms where information can get in but not get out. There should always be an API so you can extract data from this platform. The second step is to inject all the data you extracted into a common platform. This is how you break silos, and that's when you can start to rethink and rebuild the data in a more organized way. And then the third step is to add intelligence to the data you're looking at by analyzing it, rating it, and expanding it. So you can really start to evaluate events in your projects and how they impact each other. And that's exactly what Squore does. After aggregating all the data, it presents it to you in a way that makes it possible to make decisions or trigger alerts or assign actions to maintain the quality of your project or to improve it. And it's all based on all the objective information from the various data sources you started with. So I'm going to give you a few examples of how Squore helps me with this basically every day. Okay, first, let me show you what the building blocks of my project are again. I'm going to refer to them as artifacts from now on, actually, because that's the terminology we use in Squore. So you can see I have several nodes in my project for commits, tickets, source code, requirements, SBOM, and tests. This is all information I extracted from different places that gets normalized and rated inside of Squore according to a specific analysis model. And as a result, I get a rating for each artifact. So we use a scale that goes from A to G for this. And what's important is that I know that a bad rating might generate an action item for someone in the team. And so the most interesting part of normalizing all the information is how you can learn more by cross-referencing information, again, breaking silos. So one of the most powerful examples is assigning test failures automatically so they can be investigated. So since Squore links the tests with the source code, and then it links the source code with the commits, and then it links the commits with the bugs and requirements, and it also knows which developer committed a change, then it can infer that a failing test should be reviewed by the developer who recently modified the related code. And it can also infer which ticket may have introduced a side effect that made the test fail. And this information can be neatly presented in various dashboards. Take a look at the dashboard for a commit artifact, for example. So it contains the commit metadata, which is something I can get from a Git log or from GitHub directly, including the committer, the commit message, and so on, the list of modified files as well. And actually in Squore, I can click Go to Source, and that will take me directly back to GitHub. That's where I can see the information. But Squore is giving me extra information as well that would be more difficult to get from GitHub. First, the exact function artifacts that were modified, and that's the actual Java methods, which also have their own dashboard, but also the list of tests that are potentially impacted by this change. So it means that even if the code for these tests was not part of the commit itself, there may be an impact on those tests because they are linked to the methods that have changed. So luckily, all the tests are passing in this example, so the code change seems to have had no negative side effect. Another powerful example comes from comparing the information that comes from multiple code branches, all the code branches we maintain at the same time. So it's very useful to compare what failures, code violations, or vulnerabilities exist in all branches or only in a single branch. And by analyzing our product branches and comparing them, we often find outliers that we might have missed if we looked at test results on each branch in isolation. And as we build a history of releases, we can also learn more from test failures. For example, it makes a big difference getting a list of failing tests from your CI platform versus getting a list that is prioritized in a smart way by Squore. Here you can see a list of flaky tests. Basically, the intelligence provided by Squore helped me sort it by the smallest rate of failure over time. So this highlights uncharacteristic failures more than the usual ones. So the ones that do not normally fail are more likely to be actual regressions, whereas the ones that fail more often should be known issues. So it's a clear win, basically, when you learn from your past history, and that's exactly what we're trying to do by prioritizing these alerts. We're trying to make people notice when action needs to be taken and what is more noise and can be ignored. And another thing you get from aggregating past data is traceability and the ability to find gaps. I have artifacts for process objects in my project, and they help me spot events that should trigger test activities, for example. So as an example, when code is committed and tickets move from implementation to verification, the QA team can be alerted of requirements that are failing tests. Or in this case, you might be in the planning phase and you want to find which requirements we still have to write tests for. At another stage, when testers mark test cases executed, and developers and project managers want to keep track of requirements with failing tests, we can also provide this. And this information can also help you when you're building a test strategy from sprint to sprint, for example, by examining which manual test cases have not been executed in a while and that should probably be reprioritized. And that actually brings me to another challenge, which is we're producing a lot of useful information, but if nobody knows how to interpret it and how to act upon it, well, is it really useful? So let's see how we managed to make sure that this is communicated efficiently. And we're kind of moving into lessons learned territory here, because I mentioned that the number of people multiplied by the number of communication channels means that information can get lost. Well, one solution is that you can use Squore not only as the tool that presents the information, but also as the tool where you perform your reviews. So this way, discussions happen close to the source instead of getting lost in emails. And you have a trace of all the discussions and all the decisions that have been made that can be consulted later. So for example, we provide fields where you can identify test failures or mark them as under investigation directly in the dashboard of test execution. We will use the review form in this case to confirm that the test failure can be ignored. So I'm going to click on the edit icon next to the test verdict verification field. And this opens the review form so I can type in my justification. In this case, I like to make it clear that we are ignoring the result for a particular release. But in other cases, when a test failure is caused by an actual bug, I like to paste in the link to the Jira issue directly in here. And the form also offers to propagate my justification to other branches of the Squore project. So if the environment failure impacted this test on other branches, then I can justify the test failure everywhere directly. It's also possible to review your static analysis findings this way. So you can mark them as false positive or confirm them if that's the case. And the same way we identified a potential owner for an action earlier, we are also tracing who resolves or who explains an issue. So we know who to turn to if we have further questions. So there is full traceability and also full auditability of team decisions. And finally, we built integrations because you cannot expect all your users to log into your product to check results every morning. So the main point of entry is a notification that is pushed to all team members whenever new results are available. You can see it gives developers an overview of the results, but it also provides a link to the full report in Squore, so you can dive deeper into the results. So here's what the full report looks like. And because there should always be a way to understand the information by drilling down to the raw data. So if I want to take a better look at the code violations in my project, the full report also provides links to keep drilling down. And the links in this example take you to the findings tab of Squore, where you can view the violations in context within the source code. And if the finding isn't related to the source code, we also make sure that you can go back to the application that provided the data in the first place. So if you click on a third-party component, you will get a link to Black Duck, or if you click on a ticket, you'll get a direct link to Jira. And what's great is that this works at every level of your development process, which means you can put it in place for your product releases, but also for your code reviews. So instead of a team notification, you can achieve basically quality gate that fails a pull request, for example. And by the way, don't forget to notify also when nothing goes wrong, because it's equally important to remind the team when all the processes are being followed and no action needs to be taken. So when this process starts rolling smoothly, hopefully you will reach a point where no alerts are reported, because your team starts following the processes perfectly. But actually, that doesn't mean you should stop there. That's actually when you can start shifting to continuous improvement mode. As an example, I showed you in earlier slides, I showed you a rule that said that code changes should not contain new blocking or critical findings. Well, the first thing you can do if you're no longer failing this check on a regular basis is to start requiring the same level of quality, but for major findings as well. As a general rule, your rating and your quality criteria should evolve with your performance. And then there are more areas you can improve as well. So because quality goes beyond code and tests, why not add rules for following processes as well? So here are two examples of how we expanded our rule set over the years. First, we are evaluating the quality of third-party libraries I mentioned, because building a software bill of material allows us to monitor known vulnerabilities and what license the components use. So we're able to trigger new alerts when new CVEs come in. And we can also react when a new component is included with a license that isn't company approved. So both types of findings should trigger a review in this case, so that they're rectified before a release is shipped. And as long as you have open process findings, this means you're not allowed to ship. And we're also rating the quality of our JIRA tickets. So this helps us ensure that no blocking issues remain open as we get close to a release, and that issues that customers expect are fixed by a particular date. It's a good way also to detect fields that your colleagues forgot to fill in or fields that are filled incorrectly, like a target version that's set in the past, for example. And finally, based on how far along you are in your project, you can flag issues that seem to have been forgotten, or issues that you're currently working on, even though they weren't planned for the active sprint. And then the more you learn from your history, the easier it becomes to set milestones and goals for your project. And that's also something that uses data from various platforms in a smart way. So we follow the team workload, and we ensure it remains manageable based on where we are in the project timeline. This is something you can represent graphically as well, which is nice. So you make sure that the information comes across. And you can also add predictions that are based on your past history. So the example I'm showing you here, you can see it shows the trend of open tickets for a particular release. And you can tell this was a good release, first of all, because the scope was small, but also because we remained under the objectives, which is the green area in the last few sprints of the project. The prediction for when we reach 0 issues to fix, which is the dotted line, falls long before the planned release date, which is also a good sign. And there is, of course, a similar chart for the workload on the QA team. So when you look at both, you can easily know if you will have to pull more resources to help with testing as the release date approaches. The benefits from learning about the state of your tickets is clear here, but you could also add more information as a basis for your decisions by factoring in the quality of your code or the test environments that still need to be created. Anything you can measure basically can go on this chart. And it can all be shown relative to how much time is left until your release date. So let's go over what I think we learned using Squore to alert us about the quality of our releases. First, everything I described needs to happen automatically. As human beings, we do not want to build progress reports manually. We want to focus our efforts on analyzing the outcome. So if you integrate the Squore analysis with the build and deploy pipeline, then you can consult the results as soon as a new build is finished in your continuous integration. Second, since everything is automated, this means you can shift left as much as you want. There can be different alerts triggered for integration branches and development branches in the code review process. So you can create quality gates that prevent you from merging if they're failing. Just make sure you provide enough details about your criteria so your audience always understands why you're telling them something has failed. Then my assessment on using smart aggregation of data for project management is that it's ideal for assessing non-regression because it's easy to build alerts based on something getting worse. And also by cross-referencing information, you can usually identify the root cause automatically, along with the person who made the change. So that's essentially an action item that you get for free that the relevant team member can address, or at least it should tell you who the best person to review the problem is. And then final thing we learned is that you should keep evaluating new tools because the more data, the better. Also, keep building a history of data, even if you don't necessarily know how it will be useful in the future. In our example, it took us a few releases to determine what a realistic objective would be for the number of open issues 3, 2, or 1 sprint before the end of a release. But the only way we could determine those numbers was to look at past data in Squore after collecting it for a few months. And finally, let's go back to how the entire team benefits. First, we know more about our product, and we are more aware of its weak areas because we directly experience the cumbersome workflows or the performance bottlenecks, and it encourages us to fix them. So to put it simply, we find bugs and we get great ideas for new features. Also, and that's a more personal one because my job is to test Squore, but putting this process in place is a great exploratory test tool. Because not only do we use our own features, we are able to make these workflows run on various pre-release versions, and we ensure that they keep working or that they keep getting better version after version. And finally, I think the most important feedback is that we get to use our product the same way our customers do, which means that we often come up with the same ideas to improve our product. And this helps us build a vision of our product that could remain customer focused. So I recommend it. And also, I hope that I managed to show you that using Squore in the quality process is not specific to our use case, because it can fit almost any tool and process that you are following in your development. And if you have any questions about this process, how it's set up, and how we live with it, I will be happy to answer them in the Q&A session.